Welcome to the bold analysis. Two developing stories that I want us to look at, and these are developing stories that should actually paint the picture for President William Samoei Ruto. And one is a declaration by the court that the adjustments and the proposals on changing the structure of NHIF, NSSF, null and void. William Ruto had floated a suggestion for, because NHIF is a saving scheme, and in the spirit of encouraging the saving culture amongst Kenyans, for to remove the 200 shillings cap on NHIF so that someone can save according to his savings. And it's a very well thought proposal according to me, because honestly, if you're saving 200 shillings for 12 months, that's like 2,400 multiplied by, if you work for 20 years, it's little money to take home. But depending on what you can get, it's one way that you can save your money in a very safe space. But because of the intention was for government to get money, and with the spirit of corruption in government, I think people are challenging it. And of course, it's lacking, the Kenyan public are lacking confidence on the safety of the money, because the next day you will hear of a scandal. But it was a well thought. So on that end, court dealt that a blow, termed such as the adjustments as null and void. And of course, that was there. Number two, Korir Siong'ei, President William Ruto's advisor, is challenging a decision by the former ICT CS Joe Mucheru to appoint new CEO of the ICT authority on 8th August, a day to the general election. And since Joe Mucheru appointed Stanley Kamanguya as the Chief Executive Officer, CEO of the ICT Authority, taking over, who took over from acting CEO, Dr. Paul Kiprono. And even though that decision was done within the time, but it seems security advisor to the president is taking an issue saying that that move was suspicious. But I think as of 9, it's the court will interpret whether the CS in charge was having powers to appoint someone, where he had appointive powers. Dr. Kiprono was appointed by Mucheru on 21st on September 2021, following the retirement of the former CEO Catherine Getao. The former acting CEO had served as the authority's standards of programs of director. So as his term ends with the appointment of a new cabinet member by an incoming president. So now the question is this. President was trimmed of appointing powers after inauguration of president-elect. But do the cabinet, members of the cabinet, still have powers to execute their mandate and their duties? The answer is yes. I saw yesterday George Magoha presided over the music competition finale that is going on in Kisumu. And he opened officially in his capacity as the CS in charge of education. So that still is a possibility. But from what I see, there is what we call a revisit. And to me, it seems like a sustained onslaught against people or civil servants who, to me, might have served in Uhuru's government and did not have a soft spot. And maybe the Canada administration do not have a soft spot for them. We have analyzed of massive resignations in different government offices, others out of will, out of their own volition, others succumbing to forces above them. And of course, that is normal. There is nothing new. Sometimes you don't feel you can work with the administration, or if the employer feels you can't work with him, employer also have the powers to relieve you. And by the virtue of a new government coming in, there are people or there are civil servants who are going to find themselves in the periphery. But as a country, I think we have public service that also has the policies and administrative legal frameworks on the security and the tenure of their civil servants. So it's not just a matter of waking up and sending people away. But I want to say something, and in the light of this, that if the Kenya Kwanza government will go after Uhuru Kenyatta's staffers or people who work for Uhuru Kenyatta in strategic departments or the strategic ministries, even though that you can't do that in good, with a good motive to inject the new blood, but it's also a very big blunder, and it's a disaster. It's a recipe for failure. Recently, I listened to Didmas Baraza confessing that there could be civil servants who are misadvising the president. And I analyzed here that Didmas Baraza was taking an issue that some of them, especially on some issues that have been done, some decisions that have been made, they were not well thought. And I concur with analysts who believe and think that the president was more in a hurry and would have just given it time to form his cabinet so that he makes well thought out, informed decisions instead of just throwing executive orders to maybe to redeem campaign pledges, which to me, some of them were outside and were just politically motivated. So I want to say, number one, that when you inherit an institution, there is what is called institution memory. And people who have worked in organizations that are data driven, organizations that make decisions on data, or that also do research and make evaluation and make before they reach their decisions, you'll agree that 80% of informed decision is a decision that is informed by the data. So if you interfere with the institutional frameworks, then you will run a risk of losing the institutional memory. This, to me, is what is called data. And so, you will be shocked that the new faces that you'll bring in those offices will not have the luxury of making the right choices, or their competence will not be utilized fully because they will lack the resources. Even though I also appreciate that some of these offices, if you live there, you're supposed to leave every data. But of course, there is that which a person knows, and that is that which a person can do. If they are kept somewhere in the cloud, someone can run with the flash disk and go away with it. So it's a possibility, and I think it's a situation that someone needs to do. And think about it, guys. If you fire, just fire without following the due process, or on malicious grounds, then we'll most probably face litigation. And litigation, to me, is something that it derails government projects and even challenging government policies. If you take a good example, there are projects that were started by government 10 years ago, and they're stalled because of court cases that have been thrown on the way of those. And people who are in government understand how the institution works. They will go to court, through a court case, a court order is an injunction is thrown on project, and with that, the person that will be affected will not be the office bearers, but the Kenyan voter, or rather the Kenyan people. So service delivery is very key, and litigation on government offices and officers and policies will affect service delivery. In the long term, the most injured part will be William Ruto's manifesto that is supposed to be delivered to the people. Some of these things, and I think government doesn't run in a vacuum, and there is an element of continuity. Overspending on capacity building will always come because when you hire new staff, you send other people away, it means you have to build them from scratch. And again, government has spent a lot of money, both from internally and also non-governmental players that have been doing capacity building, some to the extent of even funding foreign trips and benchmarking to make sure that the civil servants in this country are competent and have the necessary skills to run those offices. So there have been a lot of it, and there is normally a notion that people who work in government are normally relaxed and there is laxity. But I can tell you, there are many. You will. Why do you find it easy that people in the public service really get their way very fast in the private sector and they really do well? Good example is Polycarp Igathe. He was in private service, but he came to the public service, served as a governor, deputy governor for some point, even though because of his standards he could not. He says in his own words that he could not stand the former governor. So there have been a lot of capacity building. So that resource, that human resource, should not be thrown to waste because of the politics of transition. There's a new government, but continuity must always be there. One of my biggest worries and worries that I think people who are into these influential positions should look at is when you bring new faces, there is a very sinister, there is a sister to people's, there's something that runs in people's mind that how am I going to make money here? So, with political proxies getting to offices, people that get to offices because of political favor, that he has got a job as a director in a ministry simply because the minister he campaigned for the person who was appointed as a minister, and that is why I don't really support taking politicians. Because politicians will hire their political proxies. They'll hire the campaign managers. They will hire their village mobilizers. They still have those political ambitions to make sure that they maintain that circle. And the political proxies will never deliver on competence, but create new chains of corruption. And that will be the most difficult thing to do. By the way, it is difficult to run in an office, especially a political office. Cabinet is a political office with friends. And that's one of the challenges that President Uhuru Kenyatta pitied in the first term, where people that were in cabinet were his friends. So there were scandals here and there, but there is less he could do. And even in the second term, during the KEMSA, some of the names that were thrown in the wake of that scandal were his closest friends and family. So it became so difficult. With the new faces, and I'm not saying that the people that already are occupants are not corrupt, but you can easily intercept because they are there. You can get your proxies from those amongst them, and because they're out to prove a point, they can do better. And the biggest beneficiary of that onslaught on Uhuru's orphans will be the opposition front. And I can tell you, take this to back. It's time for Kalonzo Musyoka to lead opposition, Raila to sit back. He will be getting feeds and classified leakages on people that have classified information on things happening in government simply because they are also retaliating or revenging. And these forces, to me, might affect what, according to me, is the implementation of the Kenya Kwanza plan. That is my bold.